Alright, welcome everybody, and welcome to my very first stream ever on the internet. I know, shocking. Someone new is streaming on the internet. But today we're going to walk through some Baldur's Gate 3 gameplay. Anyone that knows me knows that I've been a big fan of Dungeons & Dragons ever since I was a kid. All the way back in grade school, meeting over lunchtime for tabletop games, DMing, playing, doing whatever comes to mind through Dungeons & Dragons. And today, seeing the Baldur's Gate series, where it's been, where it's come, and where it's now going with the early access version of Baldur's Gate 3, it's really exciting for all of us who have been active in Dungeons & Dragons and have played it since we were kids. So today, as my first stream ever, I figured why not jump into this and stream it at the same time. So today, let's start off with a new game and we'll just walk through setting up from the beginning. And as I said in the description, I'm going to be playing a ranger today. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright everybody, and we're back. As you can see, the game has some amazing graphics, has some amazing cutscenes and voice acting to go along with it. So, after the cutscene, it drops you into the character creation menu, and here's where we're gonna set up who we are and what we're gonna be throughout this playthrough of the early access version of the game. So, as I told you already, I'm going to be playing a ranger, so we'll just go ahead and set up character name and your background. Now the background really just has an influence on what proficiencies that you have, and those impact things as you go through the game that affect your roles when it comes to perceiving threats, finding out more information about things that you may encounter or that you click on throughout the game. So for me, and as you can see, as you go through all of these, they give you different things. The two most important things for me are survival. Your survival roles impact a bunch of different things throughout the game, but that's an important one for me. And for me, being a ranger, the animal handling certainly is a bonus for me, so folk hero as a background just gives me those two proficiencies, which seem to fit very well with what I plan on doing through the game. So for race, for a ranger, historically, there's only one thing to be, and that's a wood elf. Gets you a +2 dexterity, it gets you your longbow and shortbow proficiency. Dark vision is extraordinarily useful throughout the various Baldur's Gate games that have been released in the past, and it's still extremely useful now. Negating to have to carry around things like torches and cast various light spells. Dark vision is just a very important thing to have when you start. It also gets you a +1 modifier on your wisdom. Wisdom is what rangers are going to be using to cast their spells. For the most part, rangers aren't going to be your primary spellcasters, but there are a few spells that rangers get which become very useful, especially at level 3, when you get to pick something like Hunter's Mark and something like that. So a wood elf is definitely the way that we're going to go. For appearance, it doesn't really matter all that much. Just going to pick a couple of various things here. The hairstyle's probably fine. All the rest of this is probably fine. The only thing that I will end up doing is changing my eye color. For some reason, all these games in the past, I've always had those ice-colored eyes, and it's just something I'm going to carry through all the playthroughs as you see it. So if you don't like it, sorry, just got to get used to it. For the class, obviously Ranger. For your favored enemy here, a couple of these things are going to come in very useful as you go. And as you scroll over them, you can see some of what they do, but also as you select them, you can see as you scroll down what happens down here as far as spells, proficiencies, and that sort of stuff. Bounty Hunter is very, very useful in at least the early access version of the game. Ensnaring Strike, which it mentions there, is incredibly powerful. It's simply a way to help crowd control various enemies and keep them out of the fight until you're able to deal with them. And Bounty Hunter is just an excellent way of going about doing that. Now for the Natural Explorer version here, you're going to get a lot of people that are going to pick any of the Wanderers here. So that because there is a lot of fire in the game, so taking only half damage from fire is obviously a good benefit. Poison is also hard to manage if you're in combat, especially. It's a little easier to manage if you're not in combat, but you'll see a lot of people pick these. For me, Beast Tamer is the way to go, and that's because it allows me to use the Find Familiar spell. The Find Familiar spell is going to let me conjure one of 6 different familiar animals, and all of those animals have different special abilities that go along with the animal type. And you'll see a little bit more of this as we go when you see what my favorite familiar animal to conjure is and why. But for now, I'm going to go with Beast Tamer as my Natural Explorer trait. Okay. Next is skills. And as you go through this, you can see that as part of my selections earlier, survival is inherited from my background choice. My animal handling is also inherited from that background choice. So because I chose Folk Hero, those 2 things are granted to me automatically. Now my Wood Elf race grants me Perception and Stealth. So when I have 3 skills to choose from, I can choose the remaining 3, and now I have all of the skills with proficiency in them. Again, you don't have to have that when you're going through your character setup, but if you have it, then obviously a bonus to go along with everything else that you're doing with your skill setup. Last is ability points. Now, Wisdom, again, is your spell casting trait. It's also going to come into use a little bit here and there when it comes to finding more intelligence about objects inside the game. Charisma is going to be used much more during dialogue and interactions with non-player characters throughout the game. So having a charisma score without a negative is obviously a plus, but I want to take the opportunity to get my constitution up to a +2, and I want to be able to leave my wisdom at a odd stat, because when we get to the point where we're able to get 2 more ability points, we can assign them to wisdom and dexterity and up those to 18 and 16, which are then going to make sure that I have a +3 modifier here. So I'm going to actually reduce my charisma score by 2, and that's going to allow me to up my constitution by 1, which gives me that +2 modifier. I am getting a -1 modifier on charisma here when I do this, but I think you're going to see throughout most of the playthrough that the -1 for charisma, while it is going to continue to hurt you, can be overcome in a variety of different ways. So that gives me the character setup through all of the skills, class, race, and origin. So now we're just going to click Venture Forth, and it's going to take us into the next section of the character creation screen.
Tell me, who do you dream of at night?
For now, in early access, this, as far as I've found, doesn't have much of an impact on anything that's going on. It is going to have an impact on gameplay and your interaction with NPCs through the full release of the game scheduled for next year, but for now it doesn't really matter for me, so I'm just going to leave it the default and we're going to go forward.
dead.
Okay. Again, the cutscenes in this game are just amazing. They're just amazing. So during that cutscene, you saw quite a few things. You saw the Githyanki Dragon Riders. You got an introduction to Lae'zel, who's a Gith herself and is trapped on this ship. And now we're at the point where we now have the first time able to take control of the character that we created in the game earlier. So the controls are fairly straightforward. You're able to, it's all third-person view. You're able to modify the camera view to focus on areas around you and manage your character and how they interact with the environment from there. So here's obviously the character that you have selected. This gives you access to your character sheet, which pulls up most of the base information that you're going to need from time to time to access your character, showing your inventory, what's in it, showing what weapons you have equipped and what the damages are for them, the armor that you have equipped and how well they protect you, your ability scores, your bonuses for what's in it, for your initiative, your hit points, and your movement distance. Okay. You also have an access to your proficiency bonus on your skills here. So it lists you what armor types you're proficient with, what type of weapons, and what martial weapons that you're proficient with as well. So as you can see, we have a lot of weapons that we're able to be proficient with and able to wield without any negatives. And that's all because of the things that we selected at the beginning for the character creation screen. So here lists our primary weapon and here lists our ranged weapon. Just again, something that's also shown in the character sheet here, but it gives you quick access to it. And you can also click on these to specify exactly which type of attack you want to use as you're going through the adventure that you're going to have. Down here in the middle is our actions that are available to us. We're going to go through more of that as we get into the tutorial section, because this first section here, the prologue, is just a tutorial. It's helped to make you get more familiar with the controls, explain to you how to engage enemies in combat, the differences between non-turn-based and turn-based combat, and just kind of get you an overall introduction to the game before you get into the actual campaign itself. So let's go ahead and kind of get into it here and just kind of take a look around. Now, as you move the mouse around, any object that you're able to interact with is going to become highlighted as you mouse over it. So as you move your mouse over a particular item in the game, you're going to see the two gear icons pop up. That means that if you left click,
Might still be stuck inside if we hadn't been attacked.
your character is going to move to and interact with that object. So just like here, if I click on it, character's going to move
Someone else got out.
and interact with it. And this is an important way to help gather information about the environment around you. And it will also pop up as you do things, tutorials, which if you click on this is going to bring up a video to help explain how the basic camera controls work. Okay.
Swift as my feet can carry me.
Something that's also important to know about this portion of the screen is the environment around you and how your character interacts with it. For instance, surfaces. Here, if we move our mouse over it, we see that this entire surface is covered in fire. So if I move my character into that spot, my character is going to be dealt 1d4 of fire damage for one turn, but as long as I continue to stand in that fire, that turn is going to continually refresh, and I'm going to continue to take fire damage for as long as I stand in it. The other things that you can see as part of surfaces are here. This Mind Flayer has died, they put blood on the ground, and this surface, in the case of blood, doesn't really have a whole lot of negatives or positives that go along with it. In the tabletop game, you could use things like empty bottles and that sort of stuff to click on or to pick up blood and that sort of stuff if there's enough of it. In the game so far, at least the early access, that's fairly limited. But it's important to know as you move your mouse around to notice where those areas of surface contamination are, so to speak, so that you're not readily damaging your character just by simply walking around. So, again, another Mind Flayer pod.
Might be other survivors.
Here we go.
Wonder who was inside.
And at this point, I'm just
Another step
clicking on a
forward.
lot of these things to be able to give you some background into the game. It's just more engaging in the gameplay, but it's not really doing anything as far as the storyline goes. The nursery is slightly different.
This is the pool that thing came from. The parasite now writhing behind your eye.
As you trigger cutscenes like this, you're going to get windows that pop up that allow you to roll a die against a difficulty to see if you succeed in whatever you were doing. So, for instance, this is an intelligence check. The difficulty class is 10, which means that I have to roll a 10 or better to succeed in my investigation of this nursery. Now, just with tabletop, rolling a 1, a natural 1, is an automatic failure. Even if your proficiencies would add enough bonuses to carry you over the difficulty class, a 1 is an automatic fail. And a lot of times that automatic fail can come with other negative consequences. So for instance, you may be trying to grab onto a particular object that's high above you. If you roll a -1, not only do you not succeed in doing it, but the game or the dungeon master may say you failed so spectacularly bad that not only did you fail to grab it, but when you came down, you lost your balance and you took damage when you hit the ground. Same thing with a natural 20. If you roll a natural 20, it always succeeds, no matter how many negative modifiers you may have being applied to your dice roll. And that natural 20 can give you benefits, such as extra damage or learning additional things about an object over and above just the base things you would learn if you passed the intelligence check. So that kind of explains what the DC does for those of you who are brand new to Dungeons and Dragons. And all you have to do in this point is click the dice to roll. Now, because of my intelligence being an 8, that means I have a -1 to an intelligence check here. But because of my bounty hunter role that I selected in my character creation, I have a +2 bonus to investigation proficiency. So not only am I canceling out the -1, I'm gaining an extra point toward this roll, which means I only need to roll a 9, because then I'm going to get -1, which is 8, and then +2, which is 10, to be able to meet the DC here. And it tells me my total bonus down here at the bottom. So let's just go ahead and roll and see what we get. So I obviously passed. So when you click continue, it's going to open up a dialogue and give us extra information about what we were looking at.
The casing is fragile. The slightest touch could cause it to crumble.
Okay, so previously our only option was reach toward the pool. Now that intelligence check tells us a little bit about what might happen if we reach toward the pool. So in this case, it's probably going to crumble if we reach toward it. And depending upon what you're interacting with, if, for instance, there's fire all around you, and you reach towards something that might have a flammable liquid in it, now if you know that it's going to crumble, it might not be a good idea to reach toward it, because then it's going to spill out, possibly get lit on fire, and possibly cause damage to people around it. So it just gives you more information about the consequences of what you're going to be doing throughout the gameplay. Here, I'm still going to reach toward the pool. The reason I did that is exactly what I explained earlier. It kind of shows you the consequences of those actions. If I hadn't investigated, I might never have known that was going to happen. But because I did investigate it, I knew that was possible, and because I knew that there was fire around it, I knew that was probably going to happen. I could have left without touching it, but again, just wanted to illustrate to you how this type of check impacts your gameplay overall. Okay?
On my way. Have to keep going.
So another important part of the Baldur's Gate games is being able to fully explore your surroundings. And there are a couple of ways of doing that. First is just moving your mouse around, and when something highlights, you know that you can interact with it, such as this Mind Flayer who's here on the ground. Your icon is going to change to be able to indicate what type of actions you're going to be able to do just by left clicking on it. So for instance, the gear icon means that you're going to go up and just touch it, interact with it. The Mind Flayer, however, changes to a little chest, indicate that that's a lootable object. So if I just left click on it, my character's going to move toward the Mind Flayer and loot it. So we have a skull, and we have void bulbs. This inventory screen is fairly important to give you information about what it is you're picking up to decide whether or not you even want to pick it up. So a skull, in this case, you can see the weight, that's the encumbrance, the 0.1 icon there, and a value in gold. That's what the gold number is over to the side. So it's worth 1 gold, and it's going to encumber me by 0.1 pounds. Okay, I have a carry limit. The more that I start to carry, the more it fills up that encumbrance. So picking the high value items that are the least in weight kind of helps you prioritize what you want to keep in your inventory and what you don't, because you might not always have access to somewhere to be able to sell those items out of your inventory. So you need to learn how to prioritize what you pick up and also what you keep. Okay, so for me, I'm not going to pick up the skull. There are times, however, when you want to pick up skulls. If you mouse over the skull and it gives you more information, it says this is a story item, or that this skull looks a little different in some way or something like that. It may indicate to you that it has some other purpose other than just being a regular skull that might be picked up off the ground. And in that case, you might want to pay a little more attention to it and maybe prioritize picking that up in your inventory. But for now, I'm not going to. Void bulbs are very interesting as far as gameplay goes. They're like a portable black hole that you can throw on the ground. So you throw it on the ground, in an area around it, they create a force that pulls all objects and characters toward it if they fail a DC 14 dexterity throw. So they will check to see if they pass that saving throw, just like we did with that investigation check. And if they fail it, they're going to be pulled into that location and also take 1d4 of force damage. It's kind of an area of effect crowd control object that you can throw. Kind of like a black hole grenade. So they're kind of interesting to use, and they're also worth quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and pick those up, and I'm going to leave the skull where it is.
Dead. Good.
So as I said earlier about exploring your background, you can just move your mouse around and find different things throughout your environment that you might be able to interact with. But the most important part about that is really about finding things to loot. And there's an alternate way in the game to be able to do that. And that's by pressing and holding the Alt key. You press the Alt key, anything that is able to be picked up or looted is going to be outlined, and it's going to have a tag over the top of it. And what that does is it makes it easier for you to not only see things that may be hidden back here behind the flames or something like that, it also gives you an alternate way of being able to pick it up or loot it. Because now, instead of just moving my camera to a point where I'm able to better see the Mind Flayer and get the icon to be able to click on it, I can hit Alt and I can just click on the name tag. So here, if I get to this point, I'm still not hovered over it, so I can't loot it, but Alt pops up, and now, see, I can just click the name tag into it. So holding the Alt key is very useful for exploring your environment, and you want to make sure that if you're not doing it all of the time, that at least when you get into unknown locations, that you want to take a look around you and see what's there for you. The other thing about this game is that it has it's not just a two-dimensional game. It has three-dimensional levels built into a lot of things, and if you don't move your character around or zoom your view in and out, you may miss certain things. In this case, like this chest here. So what we're going to do is, and sorry, I was checking something else here. So what we're going to do is check out some of this three-dimensionality to the environment. So I'm going to move my character here, and there's a ramp here, and I can now move my character up to high ground overlooking the locale where we were. High ground is very important in both tabletop Dungeons & Dragons and in the Baldur's Gate games. It allows you to get advantages on 2 hit rolls for ranged attacks and things like that. It also allows you to see larger distances and maybe get out of the line of sight of other characters who may be down below you. So the three-dimensionality of all the Baldur's Gate games has really been taken to an entirely different level in Baldur's Gate 3, at least in the early access portion. So make sure that even if you're not specifically looking for high ground for something, that you always move your character around to be able to scout out and see if there are other things above you or below you that you may want to be able to look at. And for instance here, there's a dead thrall and something called a slave mind over here that was above us. So we're going to go try and move over to it. If we click up here, it says, oh, this is broken. And sure enough, when you move your character to look at it, you can't get across it. So that's what the jump action is for. Now, when you're not in turn-based combat, you have unlimited actions, bonus actions, and movement. Nothing is counted against you, so you can use the jump as many times as you want. You can move as far as you want. You can use as many actions and bonus actions as you want, with the exceptions of spells and things like that that have a limited quantity, no matter whether you're in combat or not. So here, we're just going to use the jump action. Once you do it, you're going to see a ring that shows you your jump range. And wherever your cursor is then going to be able to land inside of it, sometimes it will tell you can't land there. But if you're able to put your cursor somewhere and you do not get a warning about it, then feel free to left click and jump up there. Okay, now I'm going to move a little closer to the flames, but I'm not going to step into them. And again, I'm going to jump over the flames so I don't take damage from them. Goes back to the whole surface mechanic that we talked about earlier. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is loot this dead thrall. There's 1 piece of gold, which is always nice, and a scroll of mage armor. Mage armor is a spell that can be cast to give you an armor class of 13 plus your dexterity modifier. So we'll take a look at that here in just a second as we go. There's also a slave mind. Don't really know what that does yet, but we're going to go ahead and pick it up. We're also just going to move over to the end over here of the upper platform and make sure that there's nothing else going on here at this location. Doesn't appear that there is. So I'm going to move back and jump over the flames. Now the other important thing to know about jump is, as it says here, your strength affects how far you can jump. I don't have an exceptional strength score, so it's telling me that I can jump 6 meters, and that determines how big of this range is around your character when you trigger the jump action. Okay, so I'm going to move over here to the other side of the ramp and just look. Doesn't appear that there's anything over here that we can do, but I'm going to trigger a jump action and just kind of move my cursor around and see. Nope, doesn't look like there's anything over here we can land on. So I'm just going to right click, which is going to take me out of the jump animation. Now I'm going to take the ramp back down to the bottom. Continue exploring. So we can also see that there's a chest over here. So you start thinking, how do I get up to that to grab that chest?
Moving in.
So if I go over here, doesn't look like I'm close enough, but let's just trigger a jump action and see. Yeah, see, my target is too far to be able to jump up here. So start looking for other ways to get up there.
How much farther can I go? These boots have seen everything.
Target is too high, so I could land up there, but I just don't have the ability to get up on something that's that high. So let's go over and look at some other areas, and oh, there you go.
What path lies before me?
Now here on this ramp,
Where the hells are we?
again, you get more interactions with the surface mechanic. But here's a chest. Now, chests can possibly be trapped, just like a bunch of other things in the game. So, sometimes when you get up nearer to a chest, you can inspect the chest and possibly get other information about whether or not it might be trapped, but you will also have an opportunity to roll a perception check. And that perception check is going to be based upon your wisdom modifier, and that may be able to help you know whether or not it's trapped or not. A couple of things in here. Potion of healing, obviously useful. Take those anytime that you can. And also a potion of fire resistance. Now, if you look at this, it says that it lasts indefinitely. Okay, and that's what it means up to until the next long rest. I'm not going to go through the resting portions of the game right now. We'll get to that more as we get through the playthrough and we go to our camp and we need short rests and long rests, but for now I'm just going to pick it up. So I'm going to continue moving along, periodically holding the Alt key just to see if there's anything else up here that I might be able to loot or to interact with. So I'm holding the Alt key now and it shows me that there's a caustic bulb sitting on this table over here. It's right there, but look how hard it is to be able to see it. Even if you're moving your mouse around, you might not be able to hit it. That just illustrates how useful the Alt key is. So I'm just going to go over here, hold the Alt key, click on it, and pick it up. Okay. Also, other things, obviously, Illithid or Mind Flayer technology here that we can't interact with. Continue going around here. Looks like that Mind Flayer pod has been pretty broken up. Get over here, and there's another chest down here at this end. Now, two interesting objects here. Alchemist Fire is a portable way to throw fire if you're not a magic user and you don't have a spell, if you don't have a fire arrow or a torch. Alchemist's Fire is basically a cask that you can throw, and when it hits the ground, it's going to create a fire surface in an area around where it hits. The grease bottle is a object that you can throw, and when it hits, it creates a surface of grease. Now, any character that enters that surface has disadvantage if they're standing on it, so any time that they're attacked, you have advantage against them. But also, they have to make a saving throw, or else they are going to fall over prone. When they're prone, any of those attacks have automatic advantage if you're within 3 meters of it, so any melee that's done on that character gets advantage. And for them to stand up, they have to spend half of their movement. So if you put it in front of a door, and then that door opens and a bunch of enemies run out, anybody who slips and falls now has to spend half of their movement speed just to stand back up. So that means that they might not be able to reach you after they stand back up. Another interesting way of doing some crowd control. The great thing about this game and tabletop in general is how these things can interact with each other. Because grease, as it says in the description, causes a flammable grease surface. So when you throw this bottle, it's going to create a pool of grease on the ground. But then if you throw the Alchemist's Fire on it, or you shoot a fire spell or a fire arrow or throw a torch or something like that, it's going to ignite that surface of grease into a fire explosion, which is going to damage anybody that's standing on it at that point. So these two things can interact with each other in a very interesting way for you, so it's important not to just think of anything in the game as just an individual item. You need to think of it as possible synergies that can be created in the
One
game.
day I'll catch a break.
Okay, and if you're able to do that, then
Never
that's
wanted
going
the
to
easy
help you
path.
get a lot more bang for the buck out of things that you may pick up, as well as get you out of some very sticky situations here. So
With haste.
now I'm back down to the bottom where I started, and the game is giving me a hint here as to where I need to go, and that's what this is. It's just something in this tutorial that's help explaining kind of where you're at and where you might want to go. But the mini map up here, and if you scroll your mouse over it, you can zoom in and out on the mini map, also helps show you various locations that you might not have explored. So as you look, you can see the Fog of War kind of ends up here, indicating that you haven't explored that area yet. You probably want to do it. But the Fog of War has been removed from all of this area around here, indicating that you have explored all of it. But it might not necessarily mean that you've explored everything up or down from you. So it's very important to keep an eye on your mini-map for clues about what you might need to look at and explore. So we're going to move up this way and look at the next two objects here. The first is the door. The second is this item labeled Restoration. Now you can see in the bottom that I have 11 out of 12 hit points. So I can do a couple of things to get those health points back. You can see in my character menu that I do have 3 potions of healing. So I could drink one and it would restore 4 to 10 points of healing. I can also take a short rest. A short rest is going to help replenish certain types of actions, and it's also going to help replenish some hit points. But the game in the tutorial is kind of helping you out here by giving you these restoration pods. So all you have to do is walk up and click it,
I feel better.
and you can see I'm now back at max hit points. As part of that, what I'm also going to do at this point is I'm going to use my Find Familiar spell, and I mentioned this when I was doing character creations. Find Familiar takes an action. It doesn't take a spell slot for those of us who have the Beast Tamer or Animal Tamer trait. So I can cast this as many times as I want, as often as I want, when I'm not in turn-based combat, like I am now. If I am in turn-based combat, it's going to take an action to do it, but it's not using any spell slots or anything like that. So I'm going to cast it, and it's going to give me one of 6 different animals that I can conjure as my familiar. And it's going to tell you a little bit about each one. So the spider, if it connects with an attack, has a possibility to poison the enemy. The rat can give it disease. The crab slows enemies if it hits them. The cat is a distract action. So you can put the cat up next to somebody and distract it, and that can cause negative impacts to saving throws, attack rolls, and that sort of stuff by the enemy. A frog can toxify your enemy, which gives various different effects, you know, very similar to something like poison. And raven can blind your enemies. The other thing is that each one you can see all have movements. They're all 18 meters, but the raven, I'm going to cast the raven here. You have to have space around you to be able to cast it. The raven has another ability here. When you get into a situation where you're in combat, and you'll see that at some point here as we go through this. But for now, all you have to know is that there is a fly, which is a free action that it can do. It can do it at any time at once, and it can move 18 meters at the cost of 3 meters of movement speed. This allows the Raven to have access to a large portion of the battlefield at basically any time at once, and when it gets there, it can rend vision, which means that if it hits, it's going to do 1 piercing damage, and the target's going to be blinded for 1 turn, which obviously makes it very hard for it to hit you. Okay? It can also just attack with its beak and do 3 points of damage just on the normal attack.
No time to rest.
So for now,
Breathe
I'm
deep
done in this
and
room, and I'm
move.
just going to move on into the next here.
Another step forward.
And you'll notice something about my movement. I could click way out here and have my character move all the way around to that spot, but the pathfinding that the character takes is going to be directed around the shortest path to get there. So that might lead you through things like fire that's on the ground, or it may lead you through spider webs that are on the ground, or something like that that may negatively impact you. So it's always better to use shorter movements. The other thing that's there is that you might not know if there are traps. There could be a trap sitting here. If you selected to move over here, it would move toward that trap. You would get a perception check pop up, and even if you succeeded on it, the game is still moving you, and you just walk right through it. Even though you know it's there, you haven't stopped your movement in time to be able to do it. So moving in short bursts is obviously better throughout this game, and it has been throughout all of the Baldur's Gate games. So again, we can see that we've got some dead imps here. I'm going to hold Alt and see some things that we can pick up. And this is also going to help illustrate the limitations to the Alt key. Okay? Because here's something that we can interact with, but we can't pick up necessarily. And that means that we're not going to be able to use the Alt key to see it. Okay? So I'm just going to go loot some of these imps and see if there's anything in them. Healing potion. Very nice. And a scroll of firebolt. A great spell to have. Again, 1d10 fire damage, but also you can use this to ignite grease surfaces and other flammable surfaces on the ground from a distance. So again, very nice. Okay. The Alt key also reveals that there's a caustic bulb up here. So I'm gonna go pick it up. But there's also some other things up here, and again, the Alt key's not gonna show you everything. These mucoid shells, they weigh 3 pounds. There were 25 gold apiece, so I'm going to maybe pick these up. But again, everything is weighing me down, so if I get to a point where I'm too heavy, you may start ditching items out of your inventory to free up space for more value items. So I'm going to go click on this illicit record.
Images of goblins, their habits and histories flash into your mind.
This is just something to kind of help add some lore and give you some backstory here going on. The hollow shell, again, another object. It weighs 1 pound, but it's only worth 1 gold, so I'm going to leave that where it's at.
Very well.
I'll move farther through here.
What path lies before me?
Get over to this area. There's an aquarium I can interact with.
Rains.
There's a chair here which I can interact with. The Alt key's not showing me anything, but if I look closely over here, there's some various things. Now, we picked up a slave mind earlier. This is a dark mind, so maybe there's something to these.
Another brain.
So I'm gonna go pick that up. Eldritch tablets, again, more lore here.
1,000 years of humanoid history. Elves, dwarves, humans, and more flash behind your eyes. Faint images appear in your mind. A brain, a Githyanki warrior, and centuries of darkness.
Okay, just giving us more backstory as we go here.
On my way.
Continue moving around. Continue just checking the Alt key just to see if there's anything around me that
Never wanted the
might
easy
pique
path.
my interest. Okay. Now you've been able to hear in the background throughout this a voice speaking to us and telling us to help it out, and it wants us to do something for it, but we haven't really found it yet, and again, that's because it's above us. Okay, so a couple of ways to get up there. First, there's this ramp, obviously, we can walk up there, but these neural apparatuses might do something as well. Now, generally, in these games, you don't know what it does, you don't touch it. In this case, I know what they do. So I'm going to click on it. It's basically an elevator button. The one down here is going to call the elevator down. So if you're standing down there, if you're already up here, this one's going to call the elevator up. So just another way to get up there. Okay, we're going to leave Murnath for now, and we're going to go see if there's anything else to explore up here.
Light on my feet.
Release us.
One day I'll catch a break.
Okay, so it looks like there's a chest over here, so let's go check that out.
We are here.
Another caustic bulb. Nice.
Here.
And we can just click on some of these and get some various more lore pieces and kind of backstory. Some of them will be able to do things for you, some of them
We are
won't.
trapped.
Okay, so I'm going to continue around here. And you can see this light area here. As I turn my back, it gets dark and it gets light in front of me. Wherever I'm facing, that's the dark vision trait for the elves that I mentioned earlier during character creation. In front of you, your eyesight is brightened up so you can see in the dark. Okay, and that helps us immensely throughout this game.
Release us.
Wow, 116 gold. That's impressive. Okay. So we're done looting the rest of this up here, it looks like. There's some grease on the ground, and maybe I'll be able to illustrate this if I can move up close to it.
Here.
Nope, I can't. But, again, grease is a flammable surface, so maybe if I shot this brain jar, it might explode and ignite this grease. Again, things to be aware of when you might be in combat dealing with enemies, that to stay away from objects like that if you don't know what they're going to do to you.
Moving in.
Help
So now
us.
we're going to go deal with this situation down here. And it is a situation. So let's go ahead and here's another icon for Murnath. You see that there's a dialogue icon, meaning that we can speak to it.
Release us. Yes, you've come to save us from this place. From this place, you'll free us.
The exposed brain quivers in expectation.
Please. Before they return. They return.
Okay, so at the start of that, you saw that there was a perception check that took place. And that perception check was outside of our control, meaning it was an automatic perception check that the game was going to have that is going to have no future impact to the dialogue choices or actions that we're able to perform here in this interaction. Okay, we succeeded, so that's good. It can possibly help us out, so we'll go through this and kind of see what's here.
A newborn. Born new from this husk.
You realize you're talking to an Intellect Devourer, a minion of the Mind Flayers who abducted you.
Okay, so again, there we had another background intelligence check, and even with my crappy intelligence, I managed to pass it. So it lets me know that this is an Intellect Devourer here.
The enemy. So many enemies.
So now we basically have a couple of options. We can just leave. No one ever is going to do that in a video game. Come on, be real. We can destroy the brain, which is always a possibility, or we can continue on here and see what it wants us to do.
Remove us from this body. From this case. Free us. Please.
Okay, now you're presented with a few options here, and it tells you what each of those options is going to be based upon. And when you see these inside the caret marks here, it indicates that there's going to be a roll that's going to take place. It's going to tell you what that roll is, and it's also going to give you all of the pluses and minus modifiers that are going to go along with that roll. What it's not going to tell you is how strong that roll has to be. It's not going to give you the DC or the difficulty check to go along with, or difficulty class that goes along with the checks. It is just going to tell you which one is going to be most likely to succeed, because you're rolling a 1d20 in all of these, but dexterity I'm going to get +3 for my bonus roll. This one I'm going to get +1. This one I'm only going to get +1, so dexterity is the way I want to go here. So I can either, again, destroy the brain, or I can continue working on it here at this point. So let's just try and go for the dexterity check. Okay, once it pops up, it lets us know that we have a DC of 10. So we have a total bonus of 3, so we only have to roll a 7 here to get it. But again, random number generators are what they are. 17. I rolled really, really well. Wish I'd have saved that roll.
The brain lifts from the skull, but you notice an opportunity. You could cripple the strange creature, making it more subservient should it prove a threat.
Okay, now here we're again given a couple of different options. We have a dexterity check, again, so we're going to have a +3 modifier to mutilate the brain, which it says could make it more subservient, or we can just let it go. The choice is up to you, whichever way you want to go. I'm going to try and mutilate it and see what the options are that go along with that. Okay, so now you see a higher DC. It's 15. Now I have a +3, so it means I only need to roll a 12, but that's still higher than a 50% chance that I'm going to fail this. So this is why I said I wish I'd have kept my 17 roll from earlier, because random numbers being what they are, you never know what this is going to be. And I rolled a 5. +3 is 8. So I failed it. Okay, so now we have entered into our first set of combat. And being in the prologue with the tutorial is going to kind of walk you through what combat does. But basically, we're now turn-based. And that was determined by us entering into combat, or in this case, the Intellect Devourer entering into combat with us. And we'll see kind of how this plays out. Okay. To start the combat, you roll what's called initiative. You roll a d20. Your dexterity modifier influences that roll, and whoever rolls the highest goes first. Whoever rolls next highest goes second, on down the line. So my Raven rolled really high, I rolled really low, the Intellect Devourer rolled in the middle. So my Raven is going to have first attack, but then the Intellect Devourer is going to attack before my Ranger can. So then it tells you that you have actions that are available to you on your turn. And actions are the green dot, and bonus actions are the orange rectangle. And you'll see kind of how that works as we go along here. You also have now a movement bar, whereas when we're not in turn-based combat, you can just move around wherever you want without any limits. Now you can only move a certain distance on your turn, and the more you move, the more this bar will decrease until you can't move anymore. Okay. So obviously now my Raven has first attack. So we have some options here, and if you click, these are all the options that are available to us. If you click on action, it will show you only the things that are going to take up your action. Once per turn, we can dash, we can disengage, we can attack with our beak, or we can rend vision. In addition to that, we can also use a bonus action to hide, if we would like. Okay? Otherwise, these are all the actions that you can do. Now, what I'm going to do with my Raven is I'm going to kind of move it to a point on the opposite side of the Intellect Devourer from my character, and I'm going to try and rend its vision, because it's going to attack next, and I would prefer that if it makes an attack that it misses if it can. So now I'm going to rend its vision. It gives me an outline to tell me what opponents are within that range to be able to rend a vision. And now if I hover over it, you can see I have a 90% chance to hit. And it's going to do 1 damage, and this target has 11 hit points. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it and initiate the rend vision attack. Okay. So, finish at the end of your turn. If you don't have any actions available, then you can click the end turn button to do it. I still have bonus actions that might be available to me, so I'm going to stop. So you saw that when I went to rend vision, and I did this specifically to show you what that action can't do, the Intellect Devourer doesn't have any eyes. So if I try and rend vision on something with no eyes, it's not going to do anything. If you try and rend vision on something that has multiple eyes, it might not completely blind it. So you also have to be cognizant of what type of creature you're attacking to know whether or not that attack is going to do the most damage or incapacitate the target in a way that you would want to. In this case, what would have been more beneficial is if I would use my beak attack to deal 3 damage to it instead of just a rend vision attack for 1 and not being able to blind its vision anyway. So now I still have bonus actions available, so I could try and hide if I want, but it's not going to matter. So I could also use my free action to fly, but the Raven, remember, I can conjure it as much as I want. So I actually want the Intellect Devourer to attack my Raven, because if it dies, it dies. I can just bring it right back after the combat ends, and I will not have lost any hit points. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, not hide it. I'm going to let it be a target. Okay, so you saw that the Intellect Devourer went after my Raven, and you saw it cause 7 points of damage. I have a total of 12 points of damage available to me. That would have been a really big hit if it would have hit me. Okay, so now I've basically used that Raven to absorb that hit, and I can make an attack on the target now by myself. So here's all of my actions that are available. Again, your actions here, and this includes things like throwing objects that you have, like the Void Bulb and things like that. Bonus actions include things like throwing other items or using your potion of healing or doing a flourish, which might throw your enemy off balance, as well as things like hide, jump, dip, which you can take your weapon and you can dip it in a surface that's around you. Like if there's a surface that's on fire, you can dip your weapon in to take that fire damage and put it on your weapon. Or if there's poison on the ground or something like that, you can pick that surface up and use it to imbue your weapons for a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go to my actions here and I'm going to look at what options I have available to me. Now, if I use a bow, I have a 90% chance to hit, but if you look up at the top, I'm getting a negative because the target's too close. And I'm getting a negative because I'm threatened. Okay. It's also telling you that the target is under a newborn status effect, which means that if I don't kill this thing in 4 more turns, it's no longer going to be a newborn. And it's going to turn into possibly something else, which might be more dangerous. So I want to kill this thing as quickly as I possibly can here. Okay. You can also see up there that I'm going to do 4 to 9 points of damage. So I'm not going to be able to kill it with this attack by itself. Now, if I change to a melee weapon, you see I now have a 95% chance to hit. And that's because I'm no longer too close. So I'm not getting a negative because of that bow modifier being at such a close range. So my 2 hit goes up, but my damage is still 4 to 9. I'm not going to be able to kill it with just this attack. So if I look at the other options to me, I have a piercing attack, which again does 4 to 9 damage, so it won't kill it, but it is going to also inflict gaping wounds on the target. Possibly, unless they fail their saving throws. Or unless they pass their saving throws. Gaping wounds, as well as other status effects, take place at the end of a turn. So it looks like for the most part I'm not going to be able to kill it and avoid an attack. I'm going to have to get an attack from him at some point. But then if I do have gaping wounds inflicted, maybe that will kill him after his turn ends. Hey, but let's look at some other options here, because under actions I also have other things like the Void Bulb. So let's just click on this and see what we can do. So now as I move this path around, you can see all the highlighted objects. Those are all the things that are going to be affected by the void bulb when I throw it. Okay? And you can see that the Intellect Devourer is affected by it because it's outlined in red. Okay? And the farther away from it I get, now if I threw it out here, it's no longer going to be affected. Okay? So let's throw it in an area out here. And if I do that, it's going to pull it toward that, or if I threw it out there and I pulled it toward that spot, it's just going to be farther away from me. It's just going to be able to move closer then to me on its next turn and still attack. So the void bulb probably isn't going to serve a whole lot of opportunity here. Now, if there was maybe some fire out here or something, maybe I could pull it toward the flames. Also, if there's some way to throw it down to a different level, like down here or something like that, you could throw it down there, and if the Intellect Devourer was within range, it might be pulled off of a ledge onto a lower area that it can't get back up to you at. But here, there's nowhere that I can throw it that's going to keep it from being able to hit me later on. So let's look at just other options on how we want to go about it. So the Caustic Bulb is, again, 1 to 4 damage. It's going to cause acid on the ground. So you can see wherever I throw it, what's going to be impacted by it. But again, probably not that useful in this situation. We do have something else available to us, though, and that is our Arrow of Ice. The Ice Arrow is basically a one-use thing, because I only have one of them in my inventory. And when it hits, it's going to do piercing damage, but it's also going to explode in a blast of ice. So targets that are hit by it do an extra 1d4 of cold damage. So I could do a maximum of 13 damage here. The Intellect Devourer only has 10 left, but remember, that's a range. 5 to 13 is what it can do. So I may roll 5, I may roll 13, or anything in between. I have to do 10 to kill it. So if I use the Area of Ice, I still have to get really good rolls on my d6 and my d4 to be able to kill it. But the opportunity is there, so why don't I try it? You're going to see something else that's happening here. If I shoot this arrow here, you can see the area of effect on where it's going to land. And right now, it's going to hit me because I'm inside of it. So I'm going to take cold damage here by doing this. So you have to weigh whether or not that 1d4 of cold damage is going to outweigh what the Intellect Devourer might be able to do to you. In this case, I'm going to take an option to maybe one-shot it. It's going to do some damage to me, and then maybe his damage that he does if I don't kill him is going to end up killing me. We'll just have to wait and see. It's a chance, but I'm going to take it. Okay, now what happened there is that we were both within the ice damage range, but I passed my saving throw. The Intellect Devourer did not pass his saving throw. You can also see on the ground that there's now ice. I fell down, but since it was my turn, he fell down, and he didn't pass his saving throw to be able to stand back up. Welcome back, everybody. Looks like the stream might have quit there for a second. So, sorry about that. Looks like everything should be back to normal now, though. Or I can take a chance and try and move closer and get a 95% chance to hit. either one of these, whether it's the bow, 4 to 9, or the short sword, 4 to 9, is going to be able to kill it if I hit it. I just need to take that chance to be able to get there and do it. So let's just try and hit it and see what happens. Looks like I killed it. Okay, I'm still standing on ice, but now it turned into water. And again, another surface. Water doesn't do a whole lot for you, but like it said in the tooltip, it can be electrified or frozen. So if you're standing on water and somebody casts a lightning bolt spell, it's going to electrify that water, and anybody standing in it's going to be able to take that same damage. So let's just move over and take a look. Nothing to loot out of the Intellect Devourer. So now it looks like we are done up here.
Can't slow down.
Now my Raven died, as you saw previously, but now that I'm out of combat, I can reconjure that Raven and bring it back. Use the elevator to go back down.
Don't waste a step.
And continue moving on. And again, you see me using small movements. Again, this game is just gorgeous.
Best be on my way.
So again, we're going to illustrate a couple of things here. First is that this is a little bit lower ledge. You don't have to jump. Up to a certain point, your character will actually mantle up or down onto those ledges. But here, when you try and click over here, it says, nope, that's too far. So you're going to have to jump to get there. And your Raven will jump with you. In fact, any character that's in your party that's grouped together will all make that jump with you if they can make it. Again, your strength modifier affects how far you can jump. So wizards and characters like that who might not have a high strength score can't jump as far as the other characters. So you have to keep that in mind, that if you make a jump, not necessarily does that mean that everybody in your party can make that same jump. Okay, we're going to continue to move down
These
here.
boots have seen everything.
Hold the alt periodically. Nothing else. Maybe we get down here. Maybe we see if we can jump up here. Nope, too high, not enough space, not able to do anything. It auto-saved, which is generally a hint that there's something coming up. And if you noticed it, we have something up here. You'll see what happens when we move up toward Lae'zel.
Abomination. This is your end.
Your head throbs and your skin tingles. Visions rush past. A dragon swing, a silver sword, and a flash of your face seen through the strange woman's eyes.
Ugh. My head. What is this? Ugh. Skvar. You are no thrall. Vlaakith blesses me this day. Together, we might survive. Imps block the path forward. You will assist me in destroying them. We must reach the helm before we transform.
Okay. Welcome to the introduction to Lae'zel, the bossiest, most arrogant and egotistical character in Baldur's Gate 3. Lae'zel is a Githyanki. As you can see, she was featured prominently in the cutscenes at the beginning of the game. She's also your first character that you're going to meet that can join your party. And this is the game's way of introducing you to the party mechanic. And in this case, you're going to end up taking her into your party. There's no way to avoid taking her into your party like there is in the main portion of the game. So for now, you just have to put up with her. But trust me, she can be very useful in a fight.
We carry Mind Flayer parasites. Unless we escape, unless we are cleansed, our bodies and minds will be tainted and twisted. Within days, we will be Gaith, Mind Flayers. We can do nothing until we escape. That must be our priority. Who am I? Your only chance of survival. It is where we might gain control of the Ga'arth, the ship. Once in command, we will deal with our Gaith captors. First, we exterminate the imps. Then we find the helm and take control of the ship. We will address the matter of a cure for this infection once we reach the material plane.
Alright. Now you can see that Lae'zel is now part of our party. She's listed over here in the party screen. But in the tutorial, it doesn't really act the same as a normal party, in that you can't move items back and forth between the various characters. If you go to the party screen, which is here, or by hitting tab, it just shows you. It doesn't, normally you would see all 4 characters that are in your party, and you can move items back and forth between them to help equalize that carry weight down here. But this in the tutorial is just kind of an introduction to the party experience. It's not really meant to be a regular party in the normal sense. But she's also joined us, and now we can lend her arms to ours when it comes to dealing with some of this stuff. So what we can do is kind of look a little bit as to what we're getting ourselves into. Here we can kind of get a sneak peek as to what we're going to be dealing with. So there's a lesser imp here. There's a lesser imp here, which is up on high ground. And there's also another lesser imp that is patrolling around the back side of this central column here. Okay. So let's see how we want to do this. And this is going to be an introduction to the turn-by-turn combat-based mechanic, as well as the party management mechanic. So the first thing I want to do is put everybody in sneak mode. And you can do that a couple of ways. The first is here, or just by hitting Shift-C on your keyboard. When you do that, everybody's going to get a purple icon to indicate that they are in hiding. But what it also does is pops up all of the detection cones for the various enemies or NPCs that are around you. So if you step into this red cone, you have to roll a dice to avoid being seen. If you succeed, then you're not seen and you can continue to move around in that area, or you can move out of that area if you have time. But you're going to continue to roll a saving throw every turn while you're in there. If you get seen, that character will instantly enter the turn-based combat mode. That does not mean that other characters are necessarily in combat, but that character will enter the turn-based combat mode, and it and any other enemies are now kind of in a sort of stasis. So the other characters can move themselves around while those two that are in turn-based combat remain where they are until you choose to spend your actions inside that combat. So it allows us some really interesting options here on what to do. So the second thing I'm going to do is ungroup my party. So you toggle the group mode, and basically what it says is that now you're ungrouped and you can click on a portrait of a character to control that individual character. So I'm going to take my ranger, and while she's sneaking, I'm going to move her over here. The raven that is tied to me is going to move with me, But you can see the detection cones are way up here. They never reach out here. So that movement was safe. Even though you could technically have a line of sight here, their detection cones are what matters. Okay. So now when I'm here, you can see, do I have an opportunity to attack anything using my bow? And from here, see if I want to attack the imp, you can see it's going to make me move. And it's going to move my character to that spot to be able to shoot it. But now that it's moved over here, you can see I can shoot it and it will not have me move. So I can shoot it from here. I'm undetected, which means I get advantage on attack because it's a sneak attack. And I can stay in this spot when I do it. So this is a good spot for me to be in. I also want to have my Raven stay right where it is, because if I make this attack and the imps start moving towards me, again, having the Raven be closer to them than me means they're more likely to attack the Raven than me, and I can save my hit points that way. Now for Lae'zel, again, completely independent movement. What I'm going to do is move her up to a spot here where if the enemies do move down through here and try and attack me at this location, I can then move Lae'zel over into a flanking position on them and gain advantage on them that way. Okay? So this kind of gets me into a good spot to start with, so I'm going to go ahead and initiate combat here. And I'm going to do it on this imp here. Now, some important things to realize is that right now there's an imp up here and their vision cone is seeing out here. Okay, because they have a high ground, you can see their vision cone is way out here. Okay, this imp is right now inside that vision cone in this position. When it moves over here, it is still inside that vision cone. And see, every once in a while, that imp up there turns away. But you can see that if I attack this imp, there's a very high chance that the imp up here is going to see that attack take place. Or if I kill this imp, it's going to see the body, and it's going to come investigate at that point. And it's going to call its other imp friend over here to help investigate as well. Okay? So this is one of the opportunities that you have if imps or if enemies are patrolling, you can wait to get them somewhat isolated from the other enemies and attack them one at a time. If you can't, like in this case, you just want to try and minimize how many enemies are going to be alerted to the attack when you do it. So I want to wait for this imp to move back around behind the columns, so now it's only this one that's able to see this area, and I can initiate the attack at that point. So for now, I'm just going to be a little patient, because that other imp up top has now come around. But there's also, while I'm at it, one other thing I want to deal with. You can see the weapons that they're carrying. This imp has an axe in their hand. That's a melee weapon, which means they have to get close to you to be able to use it. This imp up here isn't carrying anything, which means they're going to attack with their claws, which again, they have to get right up next to you to do. This imp, however, has a crossbow. You can kind of see it. If it stands still, yeah, you can see the crossbow. That imp doesn't have to be next to you to attack. When you get into attack situations, prioritize the ranged enemies as much as you can. They are going to be the most dangerous because your fighters or whoever who might not have ranged attacks have to move to get close to them. You might have to move a long way before you can start doing damage. Okay, so for now, I'm going to wait for this imp to get in here, and I'm going to attack it. And I killed it in one hit. So now, this imp, you can see, sees it. I've gone out of stealth. I'm going to hide myself again. And now these two imps are going to come investigate. Okay. Now they don't see me. Their vision cones have not overlapped anything, but oh. See, the vision cone entered over my Raven. So now I am in my Raven only is in turn-based combat. And you can see that by the cross swords up here in the corner. Okay. My ranger and my fighter are not in turn-based combat yet. They will not be until I attack one of these two, or I move into a vision cone area and fail my detection saving throw. Then they will enter into that combat. What that allows you to do is to kind of cheese the game mechanic a little bit. I'm not going to say cheese in the standard sense of the term, because even in tabletop D&D, this is how the encounter mechanics work. If you are not engaged in combat, you can maneuver yourself around until you get detected or start your attack. A lot of dungeon masters don't have detailed ways to make it easy to see detection cones, you know, what enemies are seeing when you're dealing with tabletop miniatures and things like that. So it can get somewhat hard for DMs to manage that detection mechanic. So a lot of DMs, as soon as somebody initiates that first attack, they're just going to say, I want you to all roll for initiative. And if you're not actively hiding or something like that before the encounter, they're not going to allow you to maneuver around and do other things. They're just going to say, you're all in the encounter now, you're all going to enter turn-based combat, so let's go ahead and do it. So for now, you can see that if I want to attack either one of these imps, I'm going to have to move, because my path to attack them from this location is blocked. But let's see if I move here. Now you can see I can attack this imp here. And again, that imp is the one carrying the crossbow. So we want to prioritize that for dealing damage. But at the same time, we want to think strategically about the battlefield, not just tactically about attacking one enemy. This imp here has a detection cone that's way out here. Lae'zel is not yet in combat, so she can move all over without triggering the combat mechanic. Okay? But once she enters that detection cone, she has the possibility of triggering combat. Okay? So see, I can move her all the way over here and not trigger any combat for her. Okay? So what I'm now going to do is move her right up close and keep her in that position for now. Okay? So now what I want to see is if I can kill this imp in one hit or not. Okay, so I'm just going to do a standard normal attack. You have other attacks, like I say, piercing strike and that sort of stuff, but again, if I don't succeed on the attack on here, they're not going to survive anyway. So for now, I'm just going to do a regular attack and see what happens. Okay, so I got a critical hit there, which means I did double damage. I rolled a 4. I did double damage on that attack for an 8, which killed it. And now you can see that my ranger has entered combat. She rolled initiative. She rolled higher than the imp did, but less than my raven did. So she pops up in the next spot here. Okay. So now once my raven ends its turn, my ranger's going to be up to be able to attack again. Even though I just attacked, that's kind of a free attack, so to speak. So now I can try and do an attack to enter into combat with Lae'zel. So I'm going to come up right behind. For some reason it wasn't selected. I'm going to come right up behind the imp here. And now I'm going to try a melee attack with Lae'zel to attack the imp. So I'm going to get advantage because it's surprised, because I'm not in combat with it. But if I was in combat with it, putting me in this position would be a flanking attack, and that would get me advantage as well. Okay, so now I have some options here. I can do a pommel strike, which is a bonus action, or I can do any of these other attacks. Lacerate, which is 4 to 13 points of damage. But if I just attack with my longsword, that's only 1 to 10, because I'm using it two-handed right now. It would be 1 to 10. So Lacerate's actually going to do more damage than just that. Okay? So I'm going to do a Lacerate action and see what damage I can do to the imp. There you go. So in that case, I hit it. The total damage was enough to kill it, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. The Lacerate isn't going to continue to do bleed damage because I killed it outright. Okay, so now I'm going to move up. I'm going to group my party back up, and we did that.
To the hell.
Flawless victory. Okay, so now I can just move myself around, search the dead enemies, see if there's anything I want here. Crossbow. I'm going to right click on it and you can equip it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to change out from my short bow. Now if I bring up my character screen, you can see that my light crossbow's gone in here. That's 1d8 piercing damage. My short bow was here. That's 1d6 piercing damage. So I have an opportunity to do more damage with the crossbow. Now I'm going to move over and search this imp here. There's a hand axe. Now, normally in the party screen, under this send to, you can send it to me or to anybody in your party. Again, in the prologue, you're not really operating as a standard party, so I can't send it to Lae'zel to see if it's better for her to use. So all I can do is really just pick it up. Okay, so now I'm going to explore this area here. Now on the mini-map you can see that there are some imps here, but if I kind of look around, there aren't any that I can see. And that's because they are above me, and that's what the little icons mean. The arrows pointing up, they indicate that the imp is above you in elevation. So at this point, if I go back into group sneak, so if I just hit Shift C, I don't see any detection cones. So that's another indication that they're not able to see me in any way. So I don't have to worry about them at this point. I will have to deal with them later on, but for now I don't have to worry about it. Okay, so now I'm going to start moving around this area and see what's here. And this is going to give me an opportunity to illustrate some other mechanics. And what I was talking about earlier is the high ground. You can jump up to high ground, up to a certain distance, and then your party's going to try its best to follow you. Okay? Now up here you have bonuses to your attack rolls for ranged attacks when you're above other characters. The detection cones that were here previously did not allow me to walk in here and get to this high ground with my ranger, but you always want to be looking for high ground to attack from if possible. It allows you a bunch of different options. Like for here, if the enemy you're attacking can't jump, they can't reach me up here at all, because there's no way for them to get around behind this to mantle up here, so to speak. So there are places on high ground that enemies simply won't be able to reach you unless they have a ranged attack, and you can attack them as safe as possible, so to speak. It also gives you, like I say, the advantage, but it gives the attackers a disadvantage to hit you because of you being on high ground. So always look around for that high ground and try and move your ranged characters and your spellcasters into that area as much as possible. Now there are other things down here. I can search the Intellect Devourer, nothing there. But I have the option of looking at what these nautiloid tanks are, and you can see I can attack them. They have only 1 hit point. I'm guaranteed to hit. But you don't really know what that's going to do. Okay? It says that there's a mysterious liquid in it, and it reacts to any heat that comes near it. Which means if I break this, whatever's in it might spill out on the ground. And if whatever ground around it is on fire, that might be bad. So the game will try and give you some hints like that. The other thing that the game is going to try and do is try and give you, like here it says I can shoot at this, but I can't interact with it. So the game is going to also try and give you... No, doesn't look like you can do anything to it. So there are possible things that, like doors and walls, that you can destroy by attacking it. So this is going to give you the opportunity to try and do that, and maybe that will open up other areas. Right now, maybe you could then walk past this and get up here and be able to walk up there. So just pay attention to your environment and what's around you, and see if it's going to give you advantages or disadvantages. So I'm going to move up here. I'm going to hold Alt. Doesn't look like there's anything up here. The mine flayers and everything are down there. There's nothing else up here, it looks like, so I'm just going to move myself back down. Okay, now there's a mysterious fluid on the ground, and again, this is what's inside these nautiloid tanks here. So again, you have to be careful with fire, but it also gives you an opportunity that if an enemy was standing in this fire, you could ignite it and possibly cause damage or kill them because of that.
If not over, then through.
So now I've got an Intellect Devourer here, and you can see that all around it is fire. So this is where maneuvering your character as opposed to just clicking on it to open it might be helpful. If you just click on it, your character's going to take a shortest path to get there to go up and try and loot it. That might put you inside the fire. So you might want to try and maneuver your character some way to get it closer to it where you might be able to search it or loot it without actually being in the flames. So I'm just going to move myself here and now loot it. Nothing there, and now I'm going to move myself out without stepping on the flames. Okay, there's also an Intellect Devourer up here on top of this little ramp, so I'm going to move here and now search. Potion of Speed and a Void Bulb. We know what the Void Bulb is. Potion of Speed is a great potion. You become hastened as if the spell Haste had been cast on you. So you get a bonus to your armor class, you get advantage on all dexterity saving throws, your movement speed, which is 11 meters, now becomes doubled. And not only can you take one action, but you can take one additional action every time you do. It lasts for 3 turns, but at the end, the disadvantage, as it says, is that you become lethargic. And lethargic has negatives to certain things that we'll probably see later on when we decide to use this. Now I'm going to search this Mind Flayer. Potion of Healing is good. The Spike Bulb does 1 point of damage and applies bleed to the target for 1 turn. Really not all that useful, but I'll go ahead and pick it up anyway. Now we get to an important part of the Baldur's Gate games in general, and that is exploring the environment around you, like I was talking about earlier. So here you can see that I could move myself, and I'm going to ungroup here, and I'm going to move myself over as close to the fire as I can get. So at this point I'm not in the fire, but see, I can jump over the fire and get to a new area out here past the fire. I'm going to jump over here and do that. Now I'm out here and I can look around and see if there's anything in this new area that I can pick up or new places I can explore or get to. I jump again. Doesn't look like there's anywhere for me to jump to. And it doesn't look like there's anything else for me to pick up out here. So in this case, it wasn't a benefit for me to jump out here. But you never know that until you do it. So always take advantage of that when you're moving around throughout the game to explore areas that you might not be able to reach just by walking to it. Okay. Now, as I'm looking around in this area, looks like I've explored all of this. This is just high ground I can get to. Holding the L key, I've, looted most of all the mine flayers. So it doesn't look like there's anything left for me to do. I've looted the lesser imps. So I'm going to move up these 2 ramps over here. Again, there's a restoration. Cool if you need it. I don't need it, so I'm going to go ahead and skip it. And I'm going to go up this side because there's a dead thrall over here I can loot right off the bat. Gold, which is good, and a bottle. Just says that there's a mysterious liquid in it, doesn't tell you what it is. I'm just going to go ahead and pick it up for now. Continue on up the ramp. You get to a point where there's a fight of some sort going on between thralls and imps. There's also another cultist over here who's hurt. And you can go talk to it. Okay?
Bull got me! Got me! Got me! Right in the gut! Tell the babes I'll be alright. The Mind Flayers have already enthralled her. Leave her, or we will share her fate.
Okay. So you talk to it, you learn some stuff. Obviously, the Githyanki chimes in because she hates everybody in the world. But nothing we can do. So I move up here, and once you get to the spot, you trigger a cutscene. Okay, still an attack going on by the dragons. You got knocked down, but it cut off front portion of the ship up here. Okay, so let's go over here to this side.
Go on! Get to safe ground!
Search the imp. Nothing I can do there. Okay, I can move up here. Again, some of this mysterious fluid on the ground. Gotta watch out for it. Hold the Alt key and you see there's a bunch of dead stuff laying around all over the place. Nothing. A dagger. Studded shield. And nothing on that lesser imp. Okay, so I am going to go to my character sheet here. I have an open offhand here. So the short sword is a finesse weapon. The dagger is also a finesse weapon. So I can dual wield those without any penalties. If the short sword was replaced by the hand axe, that's not a finesse weapon. So then anything I dealt in my offhand would have penalties that go along with it. Okay, so this just gives me an extra attack that can happen if I choose to do a melee attack against something. Okay, so if I look up here, there's a dead thrall out here. Okay, so again, what I talked about earlier, let's get out of group mode and let's see if we can reach that thrall. Okay, so I can get to that point. I can jump over here. Now I can search the thrall. Potion of poison resistance, very good. An hour mine, remember I picked up a couple of mines already.
What are these for?
and some bundles of camp supplies. Camp supplies we'll talk about here in a little bit. Normally what you're going to want to do is right-click on it, and there will be an option to send to camp directly. You don't need them for anything, with some caveats to that, so you don't want them taking up your inventory weight. But for now, we don't have any option but to pick them up because our camp is not available during the prologue. So just take all. Now you can also look around as your character and see if there's anything else up here in this area to reach. There doesn't appear to be, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump back. Okay. And again, that illustrates the always look around at your environment when you're playing this game, because there's so much that you can miss without even realizing it. Oh, another short bow.
Oh, lend a hand, won't you, love? There's a rat in the kitchen. 10 red rats. And they're flying and they're clawing.
Okay. So now the way for us to go is up either one of these two ramps here.
Get these vermin out of here!
And at this point, you have to start thinking three-dimensionally again. So as I move up this ramp, you can see that I have some imps that are up here at the top of this ramp. If I move up this ramp, I might be getting too close to them, and this one that is turning around and looking at us may see us as soon as we come up this ramp. So let's not do that. Let's go back down this way. We'll pick up our group when we get back down here. And we'll go up this ramp over here on this side.
With haste.
Look out! No!
Just gonna give one more quick look around. Doesn't appear to be anything down here on this lower level.
Careful! Watch the horns!
You can see that there's some ash here, which indicates that maybe there was an attack by one of the dragons there in the past, so you might not want to stand on it yourself.
We don't want to spook up.
Ash, dragon hit there once, they might do it again, so let's just kind of avoid those areas. We can move up and search the dead thrall. And a quill that weighs nothing, but is worth a gold. That's a perfect weight to value ratio. So now I'm going to go back into sneak, and you can see the cones of NPCs that are around you, as well as the enemies. But these detection cones don't matter as much, because even if I move into those cones, those are not hostile enemies. So I don't have to worry about this little particular area as of yet. Okay? But I do have to worry about these two. So I look like I'm in a pretty good position there, so let's put Lae'zel into a spot where I might be able to render an attack further, but I'm also going to put everybody in sneak mode again. I clicked the wrong thing. I'm going to move Lae'zel up here, and I'm going to pause for a second and see what the imp search cones do. See, it turned around and it can see all of this, so I don't want to move too close. You can see what is happening is that as these NPCs detect us, it moves us out of snake. That's why I said it doesn't really matter if they detect us, only to a certain point, because if you do get seen by them, it will move you out of sneak, and that may affect whether or not you can be seen by other enemies or things like that. So for now, I don't really need to be in sneak anyway. What I am going to do though is move my raven up slightly in front of me, and I'm also going to check the weapons here.
Do you?
So this is just a hand axe, and this is just claws, so there's nothing ranged. So they're going to have to close on me to cause damage, and that means they're probably going to go after my Raven first. So let's just go ahead and issue an attack with my ranger here. I've got 95% with melee. I'm out. Now I'm inside regular range. Now it says up there at the top, target outside range, so my hit chance drops from 95 to 90. So let's wait until he comes back, and I can maximize my hit chance. I can also issue a piercing strike, but again, if they don't die on a 3 because a 3 hit point character, because this one is wounded, then the heaping wounds isn't going to have time to really work anyway. So
Mind Flayer scrambled your brains, eh?
patience, here it is, 95. Initiate the attack, killed it. Can issue 90, 95. I can hit it on the way in, and killed it. It got close enough to see my Raven, but my Raven passed its perception, or passed its saving throw, so it didn't get a chance to enter into combat before I was able to attack again with my Rangers. So worked out really well for us. Nothing there. Hand axe. And on the dead thrall, a candle. I don't need candles, because again I have dark vision. There's a battle axe here to pick up. There's an enthralled
I'm
cultist.
a bit peaked, Mum. I think I'll go to bed early.
Now this is a chance to explain the help mechanic. If you have NPCs or characters in your party who have been downed, who are either unconscious or who are prone or something like that, you can help. You have to move within 2 meters of a character, but you can move up and you can help them using an action. Now, these NPCs are not helpable characters, but anything within that 2 areas, if Lae'zel was downed, I'd be able to pick them up physically. They would come back with 1 hit point, but they would be back and able to move and do things on their own and possibly be healed by other characters. But in this case, none of these NPCs are helpable characters. Again, you'll see that throughout the prologue quite a bit. So now let's go back this way and take a look at what's going on down here. Okay, none of these are hostile at this point, but we can see what they're doing.
We're the robbers, and they're the watch. Ready? Aim!
Okay, just an interesting dialogue interaction.
See that? Gotta aim right between the horns. Good lad.
Okay, again, more interactions, but nothing super helpful. There is another imp, however, out here. So let's see if I can get out there to a point. See if I jump there. Here. Now let's see if I can search this imp. Nope, nothing out here for me to get. So I'm just gonna jump back.
Breathe
Okay.
deep and move.
This way is completely blocked off. You can kind of see the bridge in here, which is where we're ultimately going to end up being. But let's head over this way and continue on. And again, the game is trying to help you here by letting you know where you need to go. And again, short movements, just a habit you get into. in these games. There are no traps in here, so you don't really have to worry about it as much. But in the regular game, there are traps and you want to make short movements. And here you can see one of those things we talked about earlier where you can cause damage to an object to maybe open the way for it. So I'm going to attack this. It's got 4 hit points. I did kill it in 1 hit, so it opened up the door. Okay, autosave. Obviously good.
Should mind my step.
Okay, now we get into this very interesting room. You can see there's a backpack over there that we can loot, but there's also, looks like, some buttons that we can push. There's some sigils that we can interact with. Another restoration portal. Looks like there's a couple of cultists that have been sacrificed sitting out here. Looks like there might be an upper level to this. Maybe not. Looks like there's a chest over there. So, real interesting spot here. So let's kind of walk up to...
Need to find a way.
Istik, back! Touch nothing without knowing its purpose.
And that's one of the actual smart things that she says. She's still angry and egotistical about it, but it's true. You don't want to be touching things unless you know what they do. So I'm not going to push these buttons, but I am going to look at the sigils.
Annihilate.
Okay, so you see there was a perception check that happened there for Arcana. My wisdom counts for that perception check, and now I can hover over it and see it says annihilate. It doesn't say sigil anymore, it says annihilate. So let's go to the next one.
Can't read the script.
Can't read it, so now it just is going to keep saying sigil.
Another mystery.
Okay. Now, my ranger failed all of her perception checks, but let's see if maybe Lae'zel can do it.
Unleash.
Okay. So she was able to read that one.
An arcane sigil.
Nobody knows what the one in the middle does. Okay. So now we have some opportunities here. We know that one means annihilate, one means to unleash, and we have no idea what the one in the middle does. So, leave it up to you to do whatever you might want to do with those. But you have to kind of think about this in the way of whoever made that control panel. This wasn't made by humans. Annihilate probably means annihilate for a human and for a mind flayer. Unleash for a human, that would probably mean let it go. But for a mind flayer, does that mean let it go? Or does that mean kill it? You unleash it from life. You don't really know. But those are the type of things that you have to start thinking about when you're trying to interpret what these mean. This is not a human contraption, so you can't think of it like a human contraption and what those signs might actually mean. Okay, but let's go check out some other stuff here. I can interact with the
Man isn't
cultist.
dead, but he's totally unresponsive.
Okay. Okay, this mind flayer pod you can't interact with.
Life flickers in his eyes, but he seems totally unaware of his surroundings.
Let me out! You! Get me out of this damn thing! We have no time for stragglers.
Okay, this introduces you to a new character in the game, but for now, let's just kind of walk through some of this and see what we can do.
The construction is too alien. Nothing looks familiar.
This ship is crashing. Do you intend to die for a stranger?
So now we get to two options here. You can either avoid dealing with it, and you can take Lae'zel's advice, or you can defy Lae'zel and go look around for other things. If you have to choose between defying what Lae'zel says and not, most of the time you're going to choose to defy Lae'zel.
Try that contraption next to the pod. They did something to it when they sealed me in. Hurry! Please!
Okay, so she says try in this control panel over here, so I'm going to try and touch it.
The console appears dormant. The mechanisms are completely unrecognizable at first, but then you spy an empty socket. Nothing. The console remains dormant.
Okay, so you see
Whatever
that there's
fits in
an...
that socket must power this thing.
There you go. She explained it for me. There's an empty socket there. You might need to try and go look around and try and find something to power up this control panel, which then you might be able to activate to open up the pod. So let's go look around a little bit and see what we can find. Now the game is telling us that there are 2 doors here to go through. You can go through either one of these, but let's go over here
Have to keep
first
going.
and look at this. Now, if you're sharp-eyed, you might have noticed there's a couple of scrolls here. But again, hold Alt, and you'll be able to look at what all's around there. So I'm just going to go pick up Inflict Wounds, Alt's Life, the necklace, and the elaborate reliquary. Now you see there's a new icon here. That's because this chest is locked. Okay, so when I click on it, it says it needs a key. I don't have any thieves' tools on me, so I can't even attempt to pick it, even if I wanted to.
Wonder if the gods
And I
are
don't have
watching
any
me.
spells that would be able to open it, so I don't have any choice but to try and find a key. So if I look at my map up there, you can see that this room is a small self-contained room, but it looks like there's something that heads off this way. If I go to this door
Have to keep going.
and don't get close enough to trigger it, I can now see in here when the Intellect Devourer opened the door, you could see in here. This looks like a self-contained room. So let's go check it out first.
Light on my feet.
Always check
Wonder
out
if the
dead
gods are
ends
watching me.
first. Okay.
One day I'll catch.
How many hosts of this gate infected?
A dazed woman is trapped inside the pod. She doesn't notice you.
Okay, so there's a character inside. We can't do anything with it as of yet, but let's kind of look around and see. Well, I can sit in a chair. Nothing.
Assume nothing. Objective noted.
Now see, this illustrates another important mechanic. You can have characters do certain things at the same time by ungrouping them. So maybe if you have to stand on a pressure plate over here and have another character stand on another pressure plate, you can ungroup them and have them stand on those particular spots. Now that doesn't mean they're going to want to stay there. If they get too far apart, sometimes they may want to rejoin your group. But ungrouping is a way for you to set your characters in different locations to possibly trigger other things. So that's kind of what you're looking at here, is just making sure that maybe sitting in 2 chairs at once is going to open this thing up in the middle. You just don't know. Okay, doesn't appear to it.
All's
So
well that ends.
we're going to group
Not as
everybody
bad as
back
it
up
could
and we're going
have.
to go look up here.
Don't waste a step.
Okay. Again, we have a sigil and a push button in the middle, so let's try the sigil.
Could mean anything.
He failed it, so now let's
It will
have
be done.
Lae'zel try it.
A mystery.
Doesn't know what it
to
does.
me.
Okay. let's see what happens. We
find
can
a
go
way
up here and
forward.
search this thrall first. Okay, gold, a mug, and an elaborate key that it says is a story item. These things you always want to pick up because they obviously serve some purpose here that needs to be utilized.
Might
So
fit
we
the
always want to pick
chest.
those up, and she tells you right off that that might fit the chest.
Can't slow down.
Okay, so now we have this Mind Flayer pod with somebody in it. Maybe we push the button here and see what happens.
Change her. Changed at the pull of a lever. How? If we are not purified, this may be our fate.
Corellin, preserve me. That cannot be our fate. Breathe deep and move.
So this special Mind Flayer pod here was able to
The
change
newborn
them.
mind flayer stares at you, weak and dazed.
Was able to change a human into a Mind Flayer
Time to
just
press
by
ahead.
pushing a button. So, important to kind of
And
remember.
ready. With haste.
Okay.
How much
We
farther
did get the
can I
key to
go?
the chest. So let's go over here and open this chest. Got some gold, got an onyx, and an eldritch rune. It's obviously alien, but it says that it's part of a bigger machine. So let's pick it up.
This might unlock those controls next to the pod. Swift as my feet can carry me.
The console appears dormant. The console hums to life.
At last. Thought I was done for.
What do you know? This is going to introduce you to another party character in the game, Shadowheart.
I want to have a word.
I thought that damn thing was going to be my coffin. Thank you.
Your mind lurches into her thoughts. Her gratitude is mixed with wariness, because you have a gift with you.
You keep dangerous company. Fair point. Looks like there's plenty of fighting ahead. Let me come with you. We can get off this ship and watch each other's backs along the way. Shadowheart. One moment.
Okay, this is an interesting point in the prologue. And it kind of starts introducing you to the character interaction mechanic here and how the characters perceive each other and you as the player here. So, dialogue options that you have that interact with your characters, or if you interact with NPCs and things like that, can influence how the other members of your party perceive you. So if you do something that bugs one of your party members or is against what they stand for, their perception of you may drop or go down or become more negative. And over time, that can start influencing the dialogue options that they have with you, or may even just cause them to leave your party entirely. The opposite is also true, that if you do things that match up with their morals and beliefs and the things that they've said that they find valuable, then their perception of you can increase, and that can lead to things like romances and things like that, and leads to entirely other portions of the game. So interacting with your characters can be both positive and negative depending upon what that choice is when you confront them with it. So when you think about what your dialogue options are, you also need to think about how that character that you're interacting with is going to perceive that question or that comment, and if they're going to respond positively or negatively to that comment. So we did see that she grabbed something, and it kind of made us wonder what it was, so let's find out what the answer to that is.
It's nothing. Trust me.
Enough of this chatter. We need to get to the helm. Now.
She's right. Lead on.
Okay, so during that interaction, it was made very clear that Shadowheart doesn't want you to know what that is. Shadowheart wants to keep that object a secret, doesn't want you to know anything about it. So
These
remember
boots have
that
seen
for the
everything.
future, so that
Another
you
step
can
forward.
determine kind of how you want to approach that topic later on. So now we have this console here and what to do with it. So we have some options here, and we can just kind of see what happens. But when you do that, you're going to be opening yourself up for some stuff. So just kind of be prepared and think about what might happen here. So unleash, push, or whatever this button is. So write down in the comments maybe what you think you would do here in this situation, because it'll be interesting to see if what you did matches up with what I do. I'm going to push the unknown button here.
She made them hostile.
Okay, so as soon as I pushed it, those two got woken up and released from their pods, and we immediately entered combat. The unleash button here is actually unleash from life. It kills them. Now, if you want to do that, that's fine. You can kill them and then you can loot them, but you don't get any experience from killing them or from taking on this fight. The other thing to realize is that there's a restoration pod right here, so any damage I take during this fight, I'm not going to have to worry about, because there's a healing pool right here behind me. So I might as well get the experience from this. And it seems like it's going to be a pretty manageable fight here. Okay, so the first, the initiative rolls, my ranger rolled low, so they're at the end, but I've got a pretty good deal here with 3 of my characters being able to move up and fight right now. So let's see what we can do here. I'm going to take my Raven and probably fly to the back here. This cultist has 8. So now I'm going to try and... yeah, I think I'm probably going to rend its vision, because I might not be able to kill both of these on this turn. So let's try and rend the vision. I've got a 75% chance to hit, and I did blind him. Okay, so now my turn. I could try and move away, but let's not do that. Let's just end my turn.
Give up. Not now.
The cleric is next, and now you can see I have a selection of spells here that are available to me to use. I also have my bonus actions, which include some spells. Some spells, especially level 1 spells, don't take up an action, they take up a bonus action. So I could cast some of these other higher spells and then also on the same turn cast Shield of Faith or Healing Word or something like that to gain some health back. But for now, what I'm gonna do is probably hold off on using her, even though she's next, I can skip to Lae'zel as a fighter because I can use these two interchangeably because the enemies don't get to attack until both of them have completed their turns. So what I want to do is move Lae'zel up, get off her attack, and see if I can kill him in one shot. If I can't, then maybe I want to use the cleric to kill him entirely after that, knowing that this one is blinded. So let's just move Lae'zel up here. I don't have a lacerate attack anymore because it says must short rest before use. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a standard attack at this point with an 80% chance to hit. Killed him entirely. So now, again, I still have my bonus action left. My action is red, so there's no more actions I can do. And with a bonus action, I could do a pommel strike for 3 damage. I just don't have enough movement to get over there and actually do it to the cultist. Okay. So at this point, I could invoke Second Wind and heal up any hit points that I needed, but I don't have to because I'm still full health. So I'm gonna end her turn. Shouldn't have done that. What I did was ended her turn when she was next in line, when I should have gone back to Shadowheart to try and cast a spell against the sacrifice cultist here. If you end a turn right before an enemy, then the enemy's going to go next, and it just treats the fact that I skipped over Shadowheart as I didn't want to do anything with my turn. So that was a mistake on my part. Just something I forgot, but that'll be something to illustrate for you guys so you don't do the same thing I did. Always make sure if you skip over a character to do an action that you come back to that character before you end your turn. But now I got lucky in that the spell that the cultist cast missed both of us. So now it really didn't hurt me that I messed that up. So I'm just going to do a standard ranged attack here. Critical hit, double damage, all good. So
On my way.
did something wrong, but worked out lucky. Okay, so let's go search them. Some gold. Some camp supplies, which again you would normally send to your camp. Gold and a bronze necklace. Jewelry weighs very little. You can see it's 0.05 pounds, but at the same time is worth quite a bit, 40 gold. So jewelry is always one of those high value things that you can pick up and carry around.
Never wanted the easy path.
So now what I'm going to do here is, remember Lae'zel doesn't have a lacerate attack anymore, and it says must short rest before use. So I'm going to go ahead and take a short rest. See, it gains hit points back. It also gets her lacerate action back. Uh-oh. Early access. So it's probably going to cancel this out. And we'll see what happens. Okay, so it did cancel the stream out. Let me see if I can go ahead and get it started again. This is one of those things that you'll encounter with early access games. So you hope at some point all of that gets worked out, but let's see if we can restart it here real quick and I'll get the stream back up.
Time to press ahead.
Okay, and now we know where we need to go.
Never wanted the easy path.
Assume nothing.
We need to do a short rest, get her lacerate back.
Shouldn't have wished to live in more interesting times. How much farther can I go? Wonder if the gods are
Funny
watching
thing is that
me.
there's an autosave coming up.
We are nearing the helm. Once inside, do as I say.
Who put you in charge? I'll trust my own judgment.
Cane yank.
And again, now you're starting to see the party dynamics here, and how some characters like each other and some don't. So,
Brains. Have to keep going.
okay, and there's our autosave. So, at that point, why don't we kind of... Hey. And Shadowheart ran through the fire back there. Well done. So we're going to use our other take a short rest just to get her hit points back. So at this point, let's end the stream here. We'll save at this point and pick this up next time. We can see that by our mini-map, we're getting to a quest objective. So we're going to be getting into the final area of ending the prologue. So it's going to take a little bit to go through that because there's some options that you want to explore, and there's also some possibilities of getting very, very lucky as far as RNG goes. And if you can pick up some really cool stuff really early on in the game. So we'll see what we can do and see what we can come up with. But in the meantime, I want to say thanks to everybody who has been watching this, and say thanks to anybody who is watching this as a VOD later on. For my first stream, we did have a couple of hiccups there, 2.5 hours in. But for the most part, I think it went pretty well. I'd love to hear you in the comment section. Tell me things that you'd like to improve, things that you'd like to change. For my first stream, I'm obviously sorting things out like overlays and chat and all of that sort of stuff and getting the software where I want it, but really wanted to just get in and try a basic stream and see how it was going to work out. And I think we've done a pretty good job so far, but please let me know what you think, and I'll take any criticisms or opportunities for improving things as best I can, and we'll grow together through this. So that point, I certainly appreciate all you guys. Thank you very much for all the support, and have a good night.